All right, let's just jump right in with a really tough question, one that kind of flips our whole idea of following the rules on its head. When is it not just okay to disobey, but actually your moral duty? So our story really kicks off with this bone-chilling phrase. It comes from the philosopher Hannah Arendt, way back in 1961. See, she was there covering the trial of Adolf Eichmann, one of the main architects of the Holocaust. And what she wrote about him, it absolutely stunned everyone.
Now, when you hear banal, you might think ordinary or common, but that's not what she meant at all. No, Arendt was getting at something way, way more disturbing. She was talking about the incredible danger that happens when people just switch off their brains and stop thinking. Her argument was this. Eichmann wasn't some kind of supervillain, a monster twirling his mustache. He was a bureaucrat, a functionary. And that's why his evil was banal. It wasn't born from some deep-seated hatred, but from a total and complete shutdown of critical thinking. He just followed the rules. He implemented the policies. He turned unimaginable horror into a routine, a checklist, without ever stopping to think, wait, what am I doing? And get this, in his own defense, Eichmann tried to frame himself as just a good, law-abiding citizen. He even had the audacity to try and justify his blind obedience by bringing up, of all people, the great philosopher of duty himself, Immanuel Kant. I mean, the nerve of it is just stunning. He completely butchered Kant's entire philosophy to fit his narrative. Eichmann's version was, my job is to follow my leader's laws, period. But the real Kant, his whole point was the exact opposite. For Kant, you, every single person, have to use your own judgment, what he called practical reason, to figure out what the laws should be. Blind obedience is out of the question. Because in Kant's view, every one of us is basically a legislator. So this whole idea, this failure to think, this twisting of what duty means, that brings us perfectly to another huge figure who wrestled with this exact same problem, Martin Luther King Jr. For King, civil disobedience wasn't about being an outlaw. It wasn't about chaos. Actually, it was the total opposite. It was about showing the highest respect for a higher law. The whole point was to look at the man-made laws, the ones written down, and say, hey, this one is unjust. It doesn't line up with a moral law or a natural law. The goal was to fix it. And this is where you see just how disciplined his whole approach was. This wasn't just, I don't like this law, so I'm going to break it. No way. First, you had to do it for the right reasons, to fix a really fundamental injustice. Second, you had to do it in the right spirit, meaning nonviolently and with respect for the overall system of law. And third, and this is so important, it had to be done by people who were willing to accept the consequences. They had to show their respect for the law by willingly accepting the penalty for breaking a bad one. Okay, so we've got these huge, world-changing historical examples. But what about us? In our everyday lives, at our jobs, how does any of this apply? Well, it turns out this same core idea has been repackaged for the modern workplace. So there's this leadership expert, Bob McGannon, and he takes these really big ideas and brings them right down to the office level. He calls it intelligent disobedience. And again, this isn't about just being a rebel or breaking rules for fun. Intelligent disobedience is a calculated, ethical choice. It's when you see a rule that's just not working and you decide to bend or break it, not to cause trouble, but to serve a higher purpose, like getting a better outcome, acting with more integrity, or maybe bringing a problem to light that everyone's ignoring. What McGannon says is that the best leaders create an environment where this can happen. They encourage a shift away from just blindly following the rules. It's a move from just follow the process to let's use our common sense here. And from do it because I said so to let's challenge this constructively. And why? Because the goal isn't just to check off boxes on a to-do list, it's to actually get better results. All right, so think about this. We've gone from a Nazi war criminal's trial to the civil rights movement all the way to a modern office cubicle. What on earth is the thread that ties all of this together? It's this. Whether you're trying to prevent a historic evil, fight for basic human rights, or just run a project more effectively at work, the foundation is exactly the same. Arendt, King, McGannon, they all land on the exact same point. The one profound duty we all have is to think critically. So let's be super clear.
This is not a permission slip for anarchy. It's not a free pass to ignore any rule that annoys you. What it is a call to action. It's a demand that we use our active, engaged, responsible judgment whenever we're up against rules or orders or any kind of authority. It really all boils down to one thing: a fundamental duty to think.
And that leaves us all with a really tough question, right? There's no simple answer here, and there are definitely risks involved. But at the end of the day, it's a question we all have to ask ourselves in our own situations. When is it my duty not to follow the rules?